This is the massive Adcom GFA-5800. I bought this from a local electronics recycling center for a pretty reasonable price. I've been told that when you power it on, the power LED does illuminate, but it doesn't seem to work. They did also tell me they have no means to test it, so I guess we'll just see what happens. My plan is to, if necessary, troubleshoot and repair this, fully refurbish it, align it, and test it. Before powering it on, let's take a look inside. Well, what I can say is I believe it's intact and original. That's great news. But before I can fully inspect it, I'll try and vacuum it out a bit. This is much better. I can actually inspect it now, and from what I can tell, everything does indeed appear to be intact and original. I really only have one concern. These two resistors are pretty dark. They look like they've seen some excessive heat or current or both. I'll measure those and verify they're within tolerance before powering this up. These two resistors, R59 and R64, are source resistors for their respective output MOSFET transistor. The band shows brown, black, gold, gold, so they should read something like 1 ohm. Let's see what we get. We'll start with R59. Just under 1 ohm, no problem there. Now the really dark one, R64. 9.3 k ohms. That's a problem. I'll have to investigate this further. This is Q25, the output transistor associated with R64. Thankfully, these transistors are socketed and not soldered, so removing them is as simple as removing these two screws. I'll save you the suspense and just show you that we do indeed have a short from drain to source. Because these transistors are so easy to remove, I'm going to pull all of the transistors from the right channel and test them all. The only other transistor with an obvious issue was this one. This is Q20, and it's measuring short across all pins. This isn't surprising though, because its source resistor was that other darkened resistor R59. Before I order replacements for these two, I'm going to characterize the remaining transistors. Essentially what I'm going to do is measure the gate to source voltage required to produce a fixed current through the transistor. This will not only increase my confidence that the remaining transistors are in good shape, but it will also allow me to identify the best possible replacements. Here's the setup for the N-channel MOSFETs, the IRF244. The setup for the P-channels, the IRF9240, will be very similar. This definitely deserves its own video, but I'll just give you a little taste of what I'm doing right now. After applying power, I'll adjust this potentiometer until the value on this meter reads about 170 millivolts. This is measuring the voltage across a 1 ohm resistor, so 170 millivolts is 170 milliamps. That's the constant current I'm looking for. I'll wait 3 minutes to allow the transistor to warm up and stabilize. I'll adjust the potentiometer again until this value again is about 170 millivolts. Then I'll record the gate to source voltage from this meter and repeat for all transistors. I'm all done with the testing, and based on the results, I'm not concerned with any transistor other than Q20 and Q25. If we look at the VGS, or gate to source voltage data from the upper bank, this is a pretty tight spread. 3.95 volts on the low end to 4.00 volts on the high end. Every transistor is somewhere within that very tight range. It's a similar story on the bottom bank, 3.90 volts on the low end to 3.96 volts on the high end. If there was an issue with any of these other transistors, it would likely show up in this test. With shorted outputs, it's a must to measure neighboring components. We already know this source resistor is bad and will be replaced. This one was measuring okay, but it'll also be replaced. I measured these two gate resistors, here and here. They're measuring okay, but will also be replaced. I measured these two Zener diodes, Z7 and Z8. They're measuring okay, but will also be replaced. And unsurprisingly, the two rail fuses here and here are open and will also need to be replaced. I measured some upstream components to check for damage there. Looked at these 6 components in the current limiting section, as well as these 3 resistors in the bias section. No problems at all, so I don't see any need to look any further back than that. From a repair perspective, these are my target components. The right amplifier has been removed and completely disassembled. I cleaned both heat sinks as well as the fan, and now it's time to test the fan. From what I've read online, these fans are usually pretty robust and are usually also virtually silent. I'm going to use this power supply with a starting current limit of 200 milliamps to ramp up the voltage from 0 to 12, and we'll take a look at the current as well as the fan. We'll make sure it doesn't sound or look abnormal, and I taped some strips of paper there so you can get a better visualization for airflow. Here we go. Looks like turn on voltage is somewhere around 4 volts, and we're running at 40 milliamps. Just a little bit of movement on the paper strips there. Let's keep going. We'll stop at 6 volts, halfway. A bit more movement now from the paper, and I can tell you this is virtually silent, so this is a very good start. Just 62 milliamps at this point. Let's keep going. Can hear it ramping up now. Paper is moving a lot more. At 9 volts, we're at about 100 milliamps. No concerns. We'll go all the way to 12 volts. Something like that. Around 140 milliamps. A lot of air moving there. This fan is in great shape. I had to remove everything in this unit in order to clean it properly. Now that I'm down here, I might as well verify that these large filter caps are still okay. I'll check the capacitance anyway. These are 22,000 microfarad. .22 millifarad is 22,000 microfarad. First one's good. Second one's good. Third one's good. And the fourth one's good as well. This isn't a conclusive test, but it should be good enough. These larger filter caps typically last a long, long time, especially compared to the smaller electrolytics. In addition to the repair work, I'll also perform some general service. The power supply will be recapped. Each amplifier board will also get new caps. These two here, C7 and C9, are in the signal path and should be audio grade. I have 2 low leakage capacitors for that. The other 2 can just be general purpose, high quality caps, like these. The original output thermal pads are starting to break down, so I'll replace those as well. And I'll also replace the thermal pads for these 2 devices. Any heatsink mounted components with thermal compound will have that thermal compound removed and new thermal compound applied. I'm all done with the board work. I think they all turned out really good. I did verify a few things from the left channel. Both rail fuses are measuring good. All of the source resistors are measuring good. And I pulled and tested all of the output MOSFETs. Those look good as well. On the right channel, I purchased 4 output transistors, 2 of the IRF 244s, 2 of the IRF 9240s from a reputable source, and I ran those through the same VGS characterization testing, and I actually found 2 that matched pretty well with this right amplifier. So now it's time to reassemble. That was certainly a tremendous amount of work, but I'm really happy with how it turned out physically. Now it's time to see if it'll perform electrically. I'm going to power it up slowly on a variac while monitoring the incoming current and the DC offset from both channels. Thankfully, the variac power-up was very uneventful, so we'll just take a look at the final steady state. The left and right channels DC offsets are amazing, both under 5 millivolts right now, and I haven't even made any adjustments, so that's a very good sign. The current is somewhere between 2 and 2.2 amps. That might sound like a lot, but this is a very high idle current amplifier. This all sounds very reasonable, so I think it's time to move on to DC offset and idle current adjustment. The idle current adjustment procedure in Adcom service manual is complex and a bit odd. I'm going to simplify it by just measuring the voltage across source resistors. I'll be targeting 40 millivolts, which is 40 milliamps through each device, and I'll be adjusting VR102 on each board to achieve this. I just powered it up, so I'll make the initial adjustment now. Then I'll wait as long as it takes until everything stabilizes before making one final adjustment. We'll start with the right channel. And now the left. And now we wait. It's been about 30 minutes and the amplifier is pretty stable now. I adjusted my idle current target down to a more conservative 35 millivolts. Time to move on to DC offset. The DC offset really needs no adjustment. They're both running somewhere between 0 and 5 millivolts, which is fantastic. You could hardly ask for anything better. Next, let's pump a signal into this and see what it can do. I'm starting with a 100 Hz sine wave at the input. Looks pretty good down at this lower level. Both channels are perfectly matched. I'll keep the amplitude the same, but increase the frequency. There's 500 Hz. 1 kilohertz. Still looking great. 5 kilohertz. 10. Let's go all the way to 20. Perfect. Next test, output power. For this test, I'll be using a 600 Hz sine wave. It has to be relatively low so my meters can read accurately. I'll increase the amplitude until the traces on the scope are just about clipping. Then we'll take a look at the voltages from each meter. They should be very close, and we'll calculate the output power. Here we go. We'll stop here for now. This is an input signal of 1 volt, left channel showing about 9.7 volts, the right 9.8. Looking good so far. Let's keep going. That's an input signal of 2 volts, left channel 19.6, right channel 19.7. That's an input signal of 3 volts, left channel is at 29.7, the right 29.6. We're getting closer. That's an input signal of 4 volts, left channel showing 39.2, the right 39.1. Bet we're almost there. Once I reach clipping, I'm going to back it off quickly so I don't sit there too long. That's about right there is clipping. We'll go 1 or 2 back. Somewhere around 47 volts. So let me back this down and we'll do the math. 47 times 47 divided by 8 ohms, 276 watts. This amp is spec'd for 250 watts, so I'd say it's in fantastic shape. I spent some time cleaning the front faceplate the best I could. I think it turned out pretty good. And I finished with a 60-minute burn-in test at 50 watts, as well as a 30-minute listening test with absolutely no issues. So after all that, this amp is ready for action again. Thanks for watching.